Amita, are we set? Everyone there?
We can begin, CB. We can begin. We are set to go.
Yeah. So good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all from the media. As you are aware, we have a new president of CII who was elected on the 12th of May following the newly elected National Council meeting of CII. Mr. Sanjiv Bajaj, the Chairman and Managing Director of Bajaj Finserv Limited. He was elected the President of CII. Happy to introduce him, and must just a way of introduction say that Sanjiv has been engaged with CII for now many years, and he has been a state chairman, he has been a regional chairman of the Western region of CII, and of course been active very much at the national level through many committees and tasks. That Sanjiv was, while he was the chairman of the Western region, also led national committees like insurance and pensions, NBFCs, our task force on fintechs, and participated in an he brings to him with a huge experience since 2007. Of course, he has been in charge of the Bajaj Finserv and took on additional roles like the chairman of the Bajaj Alliance Insurance and Bajaj Alliance General Insurance. And 2017, if I can say, under his leadership, the Bajaj Alliance General Insurance became the second most profitable insurance company in India. And of course, many awards to his credit and lots of new ideas which he has given to CII, and he has a number of priorities both in the business as well as that he is really looking to take industry forward through this year as a theme. One very important area will be in his during his time will be to start the journey towards India at 100 during his presidency. With that, I'll hand over to Sanjiv to make a presentation about his theme and some of the priorities of CII for this year. Over to you, Sanjiv.
Thank you, CB, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this press conference. I think, CB, you are having some network issues, so I'll request the CII team, just in case there are any network issues from my side, just message me so that I know, and if required, I'll dial in again. But hopefully that will not be the case. As CB said, I will make a presentation that talks a little bit about the economy, talks about our focus as CII, both on the short term and the current year, the theme of the year, as well as little longer term focus, what we think we should prepare as a country where CII can help as we start moving from celebrating India at 75 towards building India at 100. Yeah, can we have the next slide, please? So typically, presentation, as you can see, will be 4 parts, from India at 75 to India at 100. So we talk a little bit about what the opportunities we as CII see in the long term, CII's agenda for policy reforms, clearly an important area, what we think as CII and what do our industry members discuss as priorities, and then we spend some time on the macroeconomic outlook for the year. Next slide. Next. Now, India at 75 was an initiative that was started by CII all the way back in 2008, and with a clear framework to build an inclusively developed India by 2022. CII, as we mentioned over here, has catalyzed industry-led partnerships and convergence of various stakeholder groups on many issues linked to national priorities. We are happy to note that a number of these activities actually got traction and got included in the national agenda. This vision from 2008, so as you know, it was when India was at 60. And it found place in the government's flagship programs over since then. For example, the visioning of skilling 500 million people found place in the government's program is Skill India and PM Kaushal Vikas Yojana. The vision element of affordable and accessible healthcare found its place in the government's Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. And now we are doing a similar focus on our visioning at India at 100. And let me just take you through some thoughts over there. Next slide. When we have to think of India in 2047, this is based on some internal projections that we have done. We believe that we have the opportunity to touch, as you can see over there, an economy which would be a 40 trillion economy. For this, the key enablers should be that the share of manufacturing in GVA should move, I think that's on the next slide. The share of manufacturing in GVA should move to 27% from 18% currently. On the demand side, investment will be clearly, as we know, a key enabler, with our investment ratio rising to 33.5% by FY48 from the 28% currently. There must be increased thrust on education and healthcare by increasing government spending in these areas. And our share of exports, both goods, which is, we know, very large, we had a record year, as well as services in GDP, would rise from 28.8%, what it was last year, to around 25% in FY48, due to a number of other connected measures such as RoadTap, the Market Access Initiative Scheme, districts as export hubs initiative, and many others. Next, please. Now, when we look at how we came to those numbers, the exercise that we did was internal. We did this exercise by our different subcommittees, and you can see with that, the focus and the final number is really the culmination of sector-wise where we see India headed. So, for example, if you look at automobiles, we are talking of a market of 2 trillion and exports in that of 360 billion or so. When we look at auto components, again, $1 trillion market and exports of 3 billion as well. When we look at electronics, for example, again, a big opportunity that a country like India has. We're looking at a size of 2 trillion with exports of $1 trillion. Textiles and apparels. We have the opportunity to displace China as the center of global textile and apparel value chain. Numbers, again, as you can see, are clearly there. A new and an increasingly focused area is on defense manufacturing. And a clear visibility of defense modernization plans for the next 15 years, increasing focus on enhancing domestic value addition through indigenization, and good availability of skilled engineering and technical manpower, which we know are all key strengths of this sector, can take Indian defense to a size of 150 billion with a significant export number there also. Finally, as you can see in this slide, on the capital goods, being a provider of machinery and tools to multiple industries, an efficient world-class capital goods sector is essential for competitiveness. India currently has a huge reliance on imported capital. We are all aware of that. But with the right policies, the right interventions, the capital goods sector can reach a target of $1 trillion by FY48, becoming a net exporter of capital goods by the said year. So these are some of the key sectors. If we can get to the next slide, please. we believe that it's not just manufacturing, but it's also services. Healthcare and education are going to be key enablers for our overall economic expansion. By 2047, we must strive for quality healthcare being accessible to all, as India strives to be the healer to the world. With our national education policy, the government has initiated reforms in the education sector. And the coming 25 years will see an entirely new class of children emerging who will provide us the future workforce. Keeping in mind this vision, we are targeting 100% retention at secondary level, of 50% enrollment into higher education, and at least 50% skilled workforce by 2047. There are 10 other services sectors with significant potential, which CII believes could propel the economy further. Some of these are, as we've got over here, logistics, IT, ITES, telecom, e-commerce. You got the sectors over there. We estimate that the growth potential for these sectors is going to be very strong, and each of these start playing not only a very important role, but as you can then see, a more diversified role in how our economy gets built up. Next slide. Next. Now, moving from where India is at 2047 to a little bit more near term, which is India at 2030. These are our 10-point agendas of what India should focus on in this period of time. And while I've got these 10, let me just go through these in a little bit more detail. So next slide. So straight away, one, which is increasing the government expenditure on public health and education. It should be reasonably obvious that health and education should be accessible to every citizen. And both the central and the state governments have to increase their spending in these areas. We believe that this will then drive inclusive and equitable growth. It will improve workforce productivity, not just for today, but for tomorrow, thus making our economy that much more resilient. It will also lower out-of-pocket expenses on these two essential activities, leaving people, the common man, with more money to spend on other activities. And eventually, it will help in generating better quality jobs. Second, we must promote scale and technology in manufacturing to boost enterprise-level competitiveness. Government started on the ambitious PLI schemes, and we believe that more sectors must be brought under those, and especially those that are labor-intensive, leather, footwear, toys. We have the ability to manufacture these at high scale, and we know that this then will absorb a large part of our labor in the coming years. Incentives could be linked to payroll generation and sectors where our imports are high, but where we know that we can be competitive. We also believe that aligning trade and industrial policies, like many East Asian economies have done, will help us in achieving scale in domestic production. And incentives often come in the way of companies scaling up. Therefore, all size-based incentives should have a sunset clause with necessary grandfathering clauses, which has also been suggested by the Economic Survey of 2019. When it comes to manufacturing, we believe that the future of manufacturing in India is more and more smart manufacturing. And if India is to become the factory to the world, and we believe that is a real opportunity that India has now, and especially over these next 10 years, we as Indian industry have to adopt technology and skill-intensive manufacturing practices of the future. We believe the government must also consider in incentivizing manufacturing and spreading it to the rural hinterland so that we can take manufacturing to where the labor is. And this initiative could be aligned to the already announced initiative of one district, one product. We think the two come together quite well. 3, services is the largest sector of the economy. And some of it, like tourism, film, animation, have huge potential not only for jobs, but also for earning foreign exchange. CII suggests instituting a government-linked incentives or ELIs in 4 sectors to start with. Tourism, logistics, retail, as you can see, and animation and gaming. Next slide, please. 4th area is clearly reducing cost of doing business, further improving the ease of doing business, decriminalizing business laws. All of these will go ahead to continuing to improve the investment climate in our country. We know that 2 of the main reasons for higher cost of manufacturing in India are both the high logistics costs and the high energy costs. For the former, early implementation of the Gati Shakti project and by onboarding the states is very important to bring those efficiencies. Power reforms also, like distribution reforms, doing away with industry crop subsidizing other users, these are critical to bring down power costs to the industry because we have to get internationally competitive. Bringing all fuels and electricity duty under GST will also go a long way in reducing energy costs for business. One area where a lot of progress has been made has been on EODB, but there is still more work to be done. And a key area is in dispute resolution. This needs prioritized attention. The resolution of commercial disputes has to be time-bound, and out-of-court settlements must be encouraged so that one can move on with life. Some simple interventions to achieve this include increasing the number of commercial courts, upgrading the infrastructure, the existing ones, filling vacancies of judges, capping the number of adjournments, and promoting an alternate dispute resolution mechanism, an ADR mechanism, and of course, uniform enforcement across the various states. We also have the national single window system. This should truly be an integrated system that covers central, state governments for all approvals and renewals. Also, the number of clearances, approvals, renewals should be rationalized. And more, we have to move towards the principles of deemed approvals, self-certification, put the right safeguards in place, trust industry, like this government has been saying. Trust it, make it more, I would say, efficient. Decriminalizing of business and business-facing laws is something that CII has made many suggestions in 37 different areas of legislation. Criminal proceedings must be replaced with financial penalties and compounding, except for serious offenses where malefides are established. This is done in all over the developed world. In-house mechanisms that will help expeditious disposal of cases should be encouraged. Limitation clauses for economic offenses and completing the investigation, taking cognizance of criminal complaints in a time-bound manner will also help to just declog our current judicial system and thereby allowing it to look at the more significant serious cases. Also, we believe that a proper system for plea bargaining to settle criminal matters is required to reduce overall the pipelines. As CII, we also suggest that regular assessment of changes in laws and what this government has really taken up quite strongly in the last few years. But in addition to a one-time cleanup, a regular assessment is required so that we are always right aligned for the future. Let's move again. Our fifth area is really financial sector reform. And this is required to finance growth to improve the financing capacity of banks, NBFCs, and other financial institutions, and in general to expand our financial markets. We believe that for an Atmanirbhar Bharat, you first need an Atmanirbhar financial services sector. There is no reason why policy should not enable the large NBFCs, those in the top two layers that RBI has recently talked about, to offer full banking services. Capital markets are also becoming an increasing source of capital for industry. We saw its impact in the pandemic, and we need to strengthen this further. The corporate bond market also needs to be deepened. We are very clear that infrastructure build-up requires long-term patient capital. And that's why both insurance and pension funds must be allowed greater flexibility and a larger amount of their funds going towards investments in such long-term asset classes. We believe higher insurance penetration also provides security to people against adverse events and also raises resources for such long-term financing. The lending capacity of the National Bank for Financial Infrastructure and Development should be augmented. We believe to start with, lending target for the bank has been set to ₹1 trillion. But this will require a rapid ramp up given our infrastructure needs in the country. The cost of projects under the National Infrastructure Pipeline itself is estimated to be more than 100 trillion. And this institute should end up funding both physical and soft infrastructure. We also believe that fintech can be a big driver both for financial and for credit inclusion. And that the right policies can help us take financial services to every nook and corner of the country, positively impacting not just those in the cities, but every common man across the country, every MSME as well. Banking 4.0 is defined by 4 primary characteristics. First, it encourages a transition from product-based operations to service-based roles. And services offered by banks in the future will see a greater focus on resolving specific problems of customers instead of just offering a one-size-fits-everybody product. The second area is that Banking 4.0 will require BFSI companies to adopt a more customer-centric approach to banking. A lot more personalization, both in offering products and services, but also in servicing the same customers. Third area is that banks that succeed in riding this wave of 4.0 will need to become more and more digital. I think that's already very obvious today. More and more customers are banking from their phones, from the apps from their phones, and ensuring that the right customer experience will go a long way towards future success of banking. Lastly, Banking 4.0 needs to recognize that innovation will happen all around us, not just within us. And hence, collaborating with fintech companies on various fronts, from building technologies, building the right linkages to customers, areas of lending, co-branding products will go a long way. The sixth area is the privatization and the asset monetization reforms. Here, we are very encouraged by the privatization of Air India. This has created significant confidence of the government's ability to execute on its plans. We believe that the continued privatization plan that was announced in the financial sector should stay on track. And also the asset monetization plan, because as the government is building those assets, by monetizing those, it brings in the necessary funds for further action by the government as well. Next slide, please. If you see our seventh area is setting up the Technology Commission of India. We believe that under an act of parliament to coordinate, integrate, and synergize and manage all technology-related fundings, an institute like this set up by the government can play a very significant role in institutionalizing technology around the country. It means that technology R&D will not only be limited to large companies, but with the right linkages between industry, academia, government, and private, we can take this to smaller size businesses that need it more as well, and thereby taking our R&D spends to 2% of GDP. The India design policy also needs a rethink for integrating strategic design thinking in various sectors of economic and sustainable development. Next slide. Eighth is a strong institutional export architecture. Now here, if you see that our export efforts need to be led by a well-coordinated export mission, which, as you can see on the right, should have a National Trade Promotion Council at the center, but supported by councils at the state. And with clear focus areas, the export promotion offices overseas to open up export opportunities, training centers in industrial clusters, the number of FTAs that our government is getting into for businesses of all sizes to understand how to leverage those, a proper facilitation center. And very important, as we move ahead from our record exports of last year, standards and certification facilities, putting those in place in one uniform area where businesses of all sizes can understand what are the right standards required as we export into the various countries, can go a long way for taking MSME exports into a significant area of growth. Next. This is again, as you know, a very key focus area for India over the next 8 to 9 years. Our ambitious target of net zero by 2070 will require a number of initiatives for industry to plan its investments and choose the right technology. Focus on a circular economy has to be a high priority. And the budget has announced a circular economy action plan for 10 sectors. These should be rolled out at the earliest in consultation with industry and then extended to more and more sectors. To also support grounding of the recently announced phase 1 of the green hydrogen policy, a PLI for electrolyzers should be considered. Private sector participation must be encouraged in afforestation and agroforestry to promote carbon sinks. And the government must also consider incentivizing important green and clean technologies and green buildings. These are large consumers of energy and water. Next. Let me summarize by saying that a lot of the reform agenda will require cooperation between center and the states. And the government, we believe, should look at forming GST-like councils for building consensus in many important areas of reform, like around land. In some areas, we believe states can be provided with fiscal incentives to see that we bring them on board as well. So with that, I bring to a close that section, which is the focus on the medium term up to 2030. And that takes me now to our focus for the next year. Our theme for this next year is, while we celebrate India at 75, we look beyond India at 75. And we focus on some of our key themes of growth and competitiveness. Sustainability, as we know, and we've talked about it for the medium to long term, is becoming an increasingly important area for India and Indian industry. And a new element that we have added this year is internationalization. Because with all the FTAs the government is signing, the strength that Indian industry has developed, and the opportunity to become the manufacturing hub for the world in the coming years, internationalization will play both an important role in bringing in investments into India, but also taking Indian industry ahead. Next. As we focus on some of the key areas and we look at the cost of doing business, we talked about it a little while ago. As CII, we will develop a cost of doing business index. It will take into account factor costs, finance and capital costs, compliance costs, and societal and government costs. It will help states assess the reforms that they need to bring in efficiencies in each of these areas as it is relevant to each one of them. And we believe that this can be a huge action point for states in building up their capabilities. Skill development, another very important area to reap the benefits of our demographic dividend. And as CII, we will continue to scale up engagement in this sector by targeting 1.5 lakh youth and helping with placement of over 2 lakh jobs. Our model career centers, we want to take them from 40 to 60 and our multi-skills institutes from 4 to 9. And we will set up migrant labor facilitation centers in 4 cities as is given over here. Next slide, please. As far as logistics and MSMEs are concerned, we will work with the logistics sector to increase their operational efficiency and lower costs by developing a green port index. This will be a framework that will assess sustainable practices in ports. We also plan to conduct a study to assess the level of logistics outsourcing that needs to be done aimed at reducing costs. In developed countries, outsourcing logistics activities to the tune of 60 to 80%. And increased outsourcing of logistics, we believe, will improve this efficiency and reduce costs. We would also help develop logistics policies for 5 different states. And this would be in addition to the 9 that have already been done. Our significant focus continues to be around MSMEs. They are the largest part of our member base and really the largest part in numbers of Indian industry. How do we improve competitiveness through digital Shaksham, which will be a literacy and a digital adoption project curated by CII in collaboration with MasterCard. This project we are implementing in 7 states, covering 75,000 MSMEs, and we want to scale that up later to 300,000, bringing in efficiencies of digitization in their operations. Next. We know education has to be a strong focus because building the capabilities in our children of today creates the youth for tomorrow. Government has a bigger role to play in education, but industry has also led always from the front in improving quality and raising the bar on standards. CII's initiative in school education, such as the Catch-up campaign and Project Kaksha, will impact a large percentage of the 250 million children in the age group of 16 to 14 years. Also in areas of higher and technical education, the issue of employability and getting the right skills ends up being important. And we've been working on improving linkages between industry and academia. And we'll further increase those initiatives this year. Next. CII has been engaged in catalyzing the private sector effectively for over 2 decades in complementing government's own plans for improving just wellness and better health at workplaces. In line with the CII theme of making health a boardroom agenda, we propose a 2-pronged approach to strengthen health at workplace, which includes shop floors, across factories and plants, as well as offices as well, and strengthening the community access and availability of quality healthcare. Our proposal is to partner and strengthen at the district and block level with the healthcare centers, build capacity of health workers, pharmacies, and district level medical retailers so that we start improving quality right from that level. We will launch RAMP or RAM, which is, as you can see, a responsible antibiotics manufacturing platform. The objective of this is to fight against antimicrobial resistance. As you know, this is becoming an increasing problem. And we will do this by reducing emission from antibiotics production based on synergies and harmonization between leading private and public stakeholders, and putting in place the right strategies for sustainability as well in antibiotics manufacturing. Next. In the area of agri-entrepreneurship, linking farmers to markets has been a key focus of CII in the last few years. CII launches a network of FPOs that will help about 200,000 farmers over the next few years to facilitate institutional market access, training and capacity building on agronomy, and other farm, I would say, practices leveraged by technology. We believe this initiative will naturally improve farmers' livelihoods, but also facilitate formal market access for farm produce. In addition to the work on FPOs, we've been working also in the area of financial literacy and awareness. We will roll out a project on financial literacy and awareness now in partnership with the government on channelizing household savings into formal financial channels and investments. As our per capita GDP grows, in any developed country, the incremental savings, as it goes into financial assets, it ends up leveraging the entire economy. And this is what we must focus on. Next, yeah. Technology, as you know, has been a key horizontal focus for CII, and we will launch Aspire, an association with Premier Institutes of Research and Engineering, Technology Promotion and Facilitation. This will be an industry academia engagement program, as we have mentioned over there. We believe it will help in the promotion and policy facilitation of top 25 potential technologies critical for growth of Indian industry and the manufacturing sector, with a clear aim in building competitiveness and building actionable roadmaps. We will also institute the CII National Technology Mission, covering areas of innovation, R&D, IP, and design. This mission aims to set up a national goal of enhancing our R&D spends to 4% of GDP by 2047, but also with an interim goal so that by 2030, we get to at least 2.5%. Industry must contribute a minimum 60% of this national investment in R&D. In addition, the mission envisions India to be in the league of the top 25 innovation countries on Global Innovation Index by 2026, and sets a target to be a leader in IP by developing a hub of IP-driven industries. Next, please. In the area of sustainability, CII has been spearheading several initiatives aimed at promoting green products and practices, and also promoting and propagating net zero objectives. We will continue to work with state governments and develop a decarbonization roadmap for achieving net zero. The CII IGBC has crossed 8 billion square feet of registered green building footprint in India, and we will target to take this to 10 billion by the end of this year. We are also planning to set up an industrial blue water rating, the first of its kind, which aims to achieve water security across industry. This rating intends to evaluate and promote water through smart and secure approaches so that we conserve and we efficiently use it. The rating will help build a climate water resilience to risks in businesses, and as well as not only our own businesses, but across our supply chains. Next. On internationalization, and as I mentioned, this is a key additional focus area for this year. We believe that going global is a renewed imperative for Indian industry, one that we have seen in certain sectors already for long, pharma, IT, but one that is ripe today for multiple other sectors. We will sensitize industry on the various FTA opportunities that the government is creating, and more importantly, take this to our MSME members in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. We are also planning our 8 foreign offices, so in 8 countries. We will add to these 2 more offices will come up in Bangladesh and Vietnam. And we also plan to set up a center for international research. This center has a vision to be a leading research institute on global economy and industry and to contribute to India's international economic engagement in the years to come. I'm happy to inform you that CII has also been appointed as the Secretariat for B20 by our government. And our government takes over the G20 presidency from 1st December this year. Our role as CII would be to prepare business recommendations for G20 leaders and also engage in advocacy for global public and political representation of the joint business recommendations. CII will continue to push in India's agenda of enhanced trade and investments, besides setting the stage for expanding Indian industry's presence globally. Next. Some new initiatives based on what we've learned from the pandemic. Pandemic preparedness was a gap area, and CII has stepped up to bring to the forefront monitoring and forecasting for pandemics through the CII Center for Risk Surveillance. We believe this will be very important in the coming years. On startups, with the recent 100th unicorn in India, we are now, as a country, the 3rd largest startup hub in the world. However, we need to continue to focus on promoting entrepreneurship. And a few CII initiatives towards this is setting up a CII Incubation Center, Hyderabad. And we will conduct state-level startup accelerator programs in partnership with corporates. CII has 300 corporate mentors to support this corporate mentorship program for startups. In addition, as CII, we will conduct state-level startup accelerator programs. We will also launch a center of excellence on design and IP rights. The vision of this center is to develop India into a hub for IP-driven industries, enabling India to become one of the top leading nations in product and service design, thereby building global competitiveness in this area. And this center will also provide IP consulting services, whether it's filing, prosecution, etc. The center will also offer design excellence services, design consultancy. So everything around building capability, design IP, for example, and also put in place design excellence awards to encourage that. With that, I've entered the 3rd section, which is really a focus on the immediate priorities that we had for the current year. So let's get to the macroeconomic focus. Next, please. We've tried to forecast what we think this year will look like. And we believe that a business at as usual scenario with $100 price of oil should take us to a 7.8% growth. Oil is at 110, where it is really now we're looking at a little lower growth of 7.4% and an optimistic growth of 8.2%. We believe that given the momentum of growth over the last couple of quarters, growth is likely to continue to be strong in the next couple of quarters as well. And that gives us the opportunity as a country to focus on a few positives. whether it is the higher exports, we've already got significant tailwinds. Our recent survey done with our members shows that private investment has already started taking off, and those will provide tailwinds as well. Continued push from the government on infrastructure investments. All of these are important because some of the uncertainties, whether the length of the war, its own impact, the price of crude, or our own monsoon. Fortunately, whatever we are hearing initially, monsoon expects, though we've had a very strong heat wave, monsoon is expected to be normal this year. These factors can then help reduce the blow on what could be a slower H2. So while we don't have everything naturally in our control, we do have enough positives if we work on to ensure that we get to the more optimistic side of growth rather than be below 8%. Next. Our 118th Business Outlook survey shows, and understandably so, that 70% of our respondents expect higher retail inflation through the year. I mean, we're already seeing it, but expect it to be through the year. We know gas prices, that's our petrol prices, have skyrocketed in the last few months itself. And we also know that taxes, both central and state, on fuel are high. We do hope that the center and states come together in a collaborative manner to cut these taxes so that it cuts the impact, the negative impact on the common man, and it will then help with some tailwinds to the economy as well. Next. If you see in the last few years, we can see that savings and investment as a percentage of GDP has dropped. And partly it is, as we know, due to the pandemic, but some of this happened even a few years prior to the pandemic. Now, as an economy, if we have to continue to grow at a strong rate, and we believe that the geopolitical opportunities provides us very clearly with that opportunity as a country, we have to focus on increasing both savings and investment as a percentage of GDP. It's also important to keep in mind that from a $2,000 per capita economy, as we continue to grow, what we have seen in most developed economies is that the incremental savings can be channelized into more productive purposes for the economic growth. And for our 2047 vision, this increase both in savings and investment will play a very key driver. This will require naturally both industry and government to work together, support to MSMEs, government capex, which crowds in private investment, and push to the financialization of household savings will all be quite critical towards this. Next. Now, if you see over here, the share of household savings, we can see a shift happening away from physical assets and towards financial assets. And this, again, as I said, is quite reasonable to expect as the economy is growing, because the basic physical assets of an individual, once those are taken care of, then the rest goes into financial assets. But the speed of that growth towards financial assets, we need to work towards accelerating that. We can see that even the rising retail participation in our financial markets, and we've seen that in recent years, this has increased from 20% as on 31st December 2019 to 24% in the corresponding period in 21. And according to SEBI, the number of new demat accounts has more than doubled from 3.5759 crore to 7.38 crore in the last 3 years. We believe that all these steps will be very critical to raise India's savings and investment rate. It will help us also create a very strong capital market so that as businesses, we are not just going to banks for funds, but we go to the markets as well. We also know that this is going to be important because while we continue to encourage all kinds of foreign capital, but foreign capital can be volatile, as the last couple of months has shown us. So creating a robust financial market, domestic financial market, will play a very significant role as we move forward. Finally, we also believe over here that a younger demographic, which prefers fast-moving liquid assets, will also aid to this trend. Yeah, we can go ahead. Let's look at the external front now. We know that merchandise exports have been a major contributor to our growth revival story. Record exports in FY22. Now, it may be challenging in the current year to achieve the same high level of growth, given weaker global demand and some of the continued supply chain issues. However, there's no doubt about the fact that exports will continue to be a very key driver of our success story. It's also important to note that India's global market share of exports, merchandise exports, has gone up, as you can see, away from 0.7% in 2000 and 1.5% in 2010 to its highest ever of 1.77% in 2021, as per WTO estimates. Market share of services exports also has improved from 3% in 2010 to 3.5% in 2019 and further to 4% in the last 2 years. There are many factors which have contributed to our export performance. We believe that a significant set of factors is looking globally, is looking at India as the next manufacturing base for the world. The initiatives taken by our government, like the PLI scheme, scaling up infrastructure so that EODB becomes further easier, and improving logistics, all play an important role. We believe that this increase in exports will continue to play a very strong role so that we can take it to our 2047 target of 26% in the coming years. Next, so with that, I come to the end of this presentation. I know it's been a long one. We covered a whole bunch of areas, but over to you, CB, so we can move forward.
We'll take some questions. We'll take some questions right now, as we see. Just waiting for those who want to ask questions. Yeah. Shall we start? Ritu was trying to ask questions from the beginning. Yeah. Please go ahead, Ritu.
Hi, Mr. Bajaj. This is Ritu Singh from CNBC. Keeping in mind some of the policy agenda that you highlighted for 47, that is a longer term, and also immediately for the next year, what, according to you, as new CII President, must be the policy priorities of the government and the regulators, if you could highlight for us?
No, Sanjiv, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to do that. Good afternoon, Ritu. Very clearly, the initiatives which have to be driven to not only position ourselves for 2030, but also position ourselves for 2047 are the creation of a much larger, stronger domestic financial sector. Second, expand PLI, lay the seeds for India becoming the manufacturing hub of the world. Help in the immediate short term with continued investment from the government side on infrastructure as a whole set of private investment starts happening. And I would say continued focus on ease of doing business and reducing the cost of doing business. Indian industry must keep getting more and more competitive. Focus on innovation through the industry-academia partnerships we've talked about. Focus on internal quality improvement, efficiency improvement, so that within our gates, we get more and more globally competitive, as many sectors already are. Outside our gates, the initiatives that the government has taken needs to continue, because this is not a fixed scale. The competitiveness keeps improving globally as well. And that's where, as CII, we keep making recommendations to the government on bringing in greater efficiencies, removing the outdated rules. I think the whole judicial side of it, and I talked about that, requires a significant upgradation of capacity and simplification. Combination of these, and I realize I've covered 4 or 5 areas, will together set the foundation for India to grow in leaps and bounds over the next not only 8 years to 2030, but all the way to 2047.
Yeah, so we have Tvesh Mishra from ET.
Hi, sir. Thank you for letting me ask the question. Sir, you've spoken about rationalizing rules so that to reduce the compliance burden on companies. This has been a long-standing demand of institutions like CII. When do you see progress on this front happening? And my second question is regarding crude oil prices. You mentioned 3 scenarios. Which one do you think is more likely to actually happen?
To the first, the government has already in the last few years changed thousands of outdated regulations. But as I mentioned, this is a continuous exercise, and CII has gone through 3 phases of recommendations of different sets of rules, and that's something that we will continue doing, and the government has been very receptive to that. But as I mentioned, it's a moving scale, and that's why it's something that requires a regular review. As far as the projections are concerned, as you know, RBI's own projections are at the lower end of this. We believe that we do have a couple of quarters still of stronger growth. Oil is something that is not in our hands, as you know, in the short term. Neither is the length and intensity and the negative impacts of the war. So at this stage, I would go by where we were, which is a reasonable scenario of around 7.8 to 8%.
Thanks. Srivats of Business Line. Srivats?
I think he's muted.
Yeah, Srivats, you're still muted. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Bajaj, for taking my question. Now, I have a question on manufacturing. You did give us a sense of where you are looking at for manufacturing share by 2047, right? Where you said you will see a bump up from 17% now to about 27% by 2047. So if you could give me a sense of what the aspiration is for the shorter to medium term. And, manufacturing share has been quite stagnant as a percentage of GDA. So what do you think can be done to improve that? Will focus on exports alone deliver the goods to raise our share of manufacturing?
So as CII, we are in the process right now of consulting with our members geographically across multiple sectors to come out with a detailed plan with step-by-step timelines taking us to 2047, which will explain this, I would say, in a far more quantified manner. But the broad areas that I talked about in my presentation as well will be to go beyond the current sectors covered under PLI, expand those further, focus on what the government is talking about for smaller sectors of one district, one product, to improve the through Gati Shakti, bringing in multimodal transportation networks, making them more efficient. Each of these will help us expand the existing focus of the current exports, but also build in new opportunities. And I believe that there is both the need to significantly ramp up exports, but also to strengthen not only domestic manufacturing capacity, but in the coming years, build up international presence as well for India.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Piyush Pandey of ABP News here. You're still muted.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Sanjiv. Congratulations on taking over the new president of CII. You coming from the financial sector, we would like to know what's your take on this rising inflation, and will it lead to this era of, let me say, this era of low interest rates are over, and how the industry is gearing for it?
Piyush, as you know, the inflation rise has two impacts on it, two parts to it. One, as we are seeing, is demand side impact. Food prices and all are going up. RBI has already started the cycle of taking interest rates up, and we should expect interest rates to continue moving up in the coming year. We would expect from RBI a clear direction to how they're going to address interest rates, and hopefully in the next monetary policy review, we should be able to hear from them something to that extent. Then there is also the supply side, which you can't control directly. A lot of it is driven by oil, some of the supply chain disruptions that continue to happen. All this put together, I do believe that we are now in an era of higher interest rates. This will help us in bringing down inflation, at least part of that going forward. We hope that there is a strong monsoon. Early signs of that, early forecasts of that are positive. And a combination of this then should put us, I think, in a better place by the second half of the year for us to decide where inflation and interest rates would move.
Right. Mr. Vishwanathan? Just unmute yourself, Mr. Vishwanathan. No, you're still muted. We can't hear you, Mr. Vishwanathan. You'll have to unmute yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Now it's okay?
Yeah, but you're not stable.
Sanjiv, it's a great... sorry?
Go ahead.
Sanjiv, you hear me?
Yes,
we can hear you. There's a continuation of the question on fishing. I just had newspaper advertisements a couple of days back where, sorry? A couple of days back, newspapers displayed advertisements on cost of construction increasing by 600 rupees per square foot. The members concerned, steel manufacturers, cement manufacturers, a whole lot of them, in a beautiful, extensive address, taking us to 2030, 2047. This particular issue, I thought, deserved much more attention. You leave it to RBI.
We can't hear you clearly. Your voice is breaking a lot. So we unfortunately can't understand the question. Do you want to put off your video? Maybe the audio will become better. If you can put off your video and try again. Yeah, let's see. Let's try now. Has he got... you've gone on mute as well. You need to unmute yourself. Yeah, now let's try.
I have unmuted.
Much better.
And am I audible now?
Yes.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sanjiv, it's interesting. In an interesting thing, you have taken us to 2030 and 2047, painted a very rosy picture. I'm more concerned about the present in the sense that inflation is going beyond control. House real estate manufacturers already warned of 600 rupee increase per square foot. You go to hospital, the rates have increased by 50 to 100% in several cases. Can't CII do something to look also at this more seriously. You can't leave it to RBI governor to look at this at alone.
As you know that when prices go up, they are either because of demand side increases or supply side disturbances. Unfortunately, we are in a situation where we are seeing a combination of both, because we have not seen capacity go up in the last few years, just as we are coming out, hopefully coming out of this pandemic. So it's not an easy time. It's not an easy time. It's not something that any one entity can do. But as CII, a number of initiatives and suggestions go out regularly, both to the government, to RBI, and I believe that they are taking the necessary steps. Let us hope in the coming quarters, as transmission of these rate increases takes place on the ground, it will have the impact of moderating inflation from where it is currently.
Right. We have Surya Murthy from Telegraph, and then Shiladita. Yeah. Surya Murthy, we can't see you. Okay. Yeah. No. Probably we are unable to.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Thing is, one of the slides you said that private investment should take off in FY23, implying that it hasn't taken off so far. This because of the COVID. Since the COVID, if you take COVID as a benchmark, do you think in the current scenario of rising inflation and RBI increasing the rates, the animal spirit would still come in and private investment would take place, or there has to be something more that needs to be done?
Yeah. So when I talked of private investment taking off, remember, to take off, you have to first get on the runway and start moving fast. If you look at the analysis of the CMI CapEx database, private sector investment, which is measured by value of new projects that get announced, increased by 112% in FY22 to stand at just over 10 lakh crore, as compared to, from a smaller base of 4.73 lakh crore in the previous years. So we're already seeing sectors such as transport services, metals and metal products, electricity, construction, real estate, chemicals, chemical products. These are the ones that already attracted higher private investment in 22. What we are hoping for is to see a more broader investment recovery in the current year. We also know that the manufacturing sector, it continues to attract the highest of investments, and we'll see that growing. We hope that that grows further in this year. There's also a survey by the RBI on the manufacturing sector, which shows that the capacity utilization of the manufacturing sector in the third quarter of last year picked up to 72% from 68% in the second quarter. So this also makes us hopeful that with sustained demand, you will see further improvement in investment.
Right. Shiladita Pandit of the Times of India, would you like to go ahead, please? Yeah, you put your questions on the chat.
Yeah, sure. Can I go ahead now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I already put my questions forward, but first is about startups. The fact that you mentioned there are so many unicorns, but there are still way more startups that fail. So first is, how do you plan to incubate the startups to a point that the rate of failure is reduced? Number one. And number two is, what do you think is the state of foreign investment in Indian manufacturing, considering the fact that over the past year or so, I mean, now we saw Holcim's exit now, and before that Ford exited the market as well. So how do you assess that?
So second one first, a few companies exit, many new companies come in. This is a part of life. This, in any large economy, will be a process where, based on global priorities, global opportunities, competitiveness, you will see companies move in and out. What's important is to see overall is the domestic economy growing? Is it creating the right opportunities for new investments and increase in existing investments? And that clearly is happening. As far as startups is concerned, yes, that is the way the entire startup network works. For every 100 startups, you probably have 20, 30 that become blockbusters, and you have 5 that become unicorns, and that 1 or 2 become the huge listed entities. But as CII, there are a number of initiatives that we take. We have a national committee that focuses on building capabilities of startups. As I mentioned, we have from our member companies over 300 mentors around the country that work between our national committees and our regional and state level initiatives towards startups. We have built a set of initiatives to house startups with some of the state governments and encourage that entire practice. We believe that all these put together should help in that greater success rate for startups.
Just to add, actually, we are also providing, as Sanjiv mentioned, we are providing mentoring support. We have a center of excellence on startups, which has been created, which is based out of Telangana. And this startup center actually works on mentoring support as well as market access, as well as facilitating funding from family offices as well as corporates. Our core focus is providing industry connect to startups. That's the most important area for mentorship, for business and growth, and for investment. So we have one more question coming up from Banikinkar Patnaik.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Hello. Good afternoon, Mr. Bajaj. My question is on this bank privatization and asset monetization that you spoke about. The government last fiscal, they proposed privatization of 2 banks, but we haven't heard much after that. So, what should be your recommendation to the government on this issue, and whether we need a much larger number of banks in India, and if yes, how should we go about that?
The first one, we encourage post the privatization of Air India, now the upcoming listing of LIC, and as you know, that process is through now, that this frees up time for the government to focus on privatization of those 2 public sector banks and 1 general insurance company that they've talked about. Our understanding is that the government continues to be committed to this, and it will be an important signal as they go ahead with this, because it will really action their intent that government should not be in business. So we believe that this is something that we are likely to see hopefully in the coming year itself. What was the second part of what you said?
Yeah, whether we need a much larger number of banks in India, and how should we go about it?
Very clearly, we need banking to reach the nooks and corners of India. We need significant amount of innovation in banking. Banking needs to be physical for those that want it physical, needs to be digital for the current generation of individuals who've probably not even gone to a bank branch, but do everything from their phones. So the scale of banking, innovation in banking, giving more teeth to the stronger, larger NBFCs, as I mentioned earlier, so that they don't just provide the last mile banking, but they provide most of what banking can provide with the right adequate risks mitigation measures naturally put in place from the central bank. I believe all this will go towards creating a much stronger domestic financial services sector. Even as far as insurance, as I mentioned in my presentation, globally, insurance and pension money, which is long-term in nature, goes towards financing long-term projects. Bank money is not suited for long-term projects. Insurance also, money should be used for startups. because these are again investments which benefit only in the medium to long term. And there are some limitations in the current Insurance Act. I believe this is something that IRDA is well conversed with and is working towards, again, making changes over here so that we use our domestic money beyond the physical requirements of the individual into productive financial investments which benefit not only the individual and his or her own household, but benefits the growth of the economy as well. And we should continue to encourage foreign investment in a stable way. The government is already doing that, but we have to keep in mind that foreign investment can come in easily, but can go out also, as we are seeing in the last couple of months. So the robustness of our domestic financial services industry is something that we need to continue to focus on, both in breadth as well as in depth.
So thank you very much. That brings us to the close of this first press conference of the new president, and we look forward to meeting many of you very soon next month on after we come back from Davos in person, and we will see that we can get an occasion to do that so very soon. So thank you very much, all friends and media from the media, and thank you very much, Sanjiv, for your first appearance. Thank you.
Thank you for participating, and see you all soon. Bye-bye.